deregulate your bike and behave like a thug on it, then that's where your bike's going to end up.
This is, of course, I think there was front page coverage. You have some officers now, I'm going to call them almost like scramble motorbikes. Is that what they're... what sort of kit are you using? These new bikes, motorbikes? These new bikes.
So we're buying these electric bikes, but sort of once they're above a certain speed, they are motorbikes. You need the same licence and regulation. The reason we're seizing the ones that are deregulated is they're illegal because people changed it so they can go at high speed. It becomes a motorbike. If you don't have a licence and insurance, it's illegal. We seize it and we crush it. And it's also dangerous because they're messing around with the batteries, and these lithium batteries are
well, they cause house fires, don't they?
They cause house fires, etc. as well. So we're seizing them, we're getting the lithium batteries recycled, and then we're crushing the bikes, and again, that goes for recycling.
OK, and what's the speed then? What can they operate at?
Some of them, I think, go up to 50 or 60. And
on a good lord.
They're sort of seriously scary. So there's one make called the Sauron bike. So we've got officers trained to ride them, so we can do pursuits and we can catch these
How do you
idiots
stop
on them.
You can't tap their back wheel, can you?
No, there's lots of tactics I would love us to use, but we're not allowed to do it for all sorts of safety reasons.
So how do you stop him?
Or her? They have to stop eventually. So there's some long pursuits.
Well, they could go to Manchester, Commissioner.
They're not going to go that far. The batteries don't last that long.
Oh, right, I see.
We've also one of the things we're doing at the moment. We're starting to use drones as part of our response and pursuit effort, and so that helps us respond quickly to incidents before officers get there and give officers a feed, but also we can do pursuits more safely.
All right, I'm coming to the first call. I just need to challenge you. And obviously we want it to work, but you are aware we are the phone theft capital of Europe. Criminals stealing 80,000 mobile devices last year, which, if you work it out, Commissioner, that's one every 6 minutes. That's not quite the picture you just painted, is it?
So phone theft is down 15% this year. We've got further to go.
We're doing something. Of Europe,
that's not true. So there was
that's from the Policy Exchange.
That's not true. So there was an article in the Times.
What's your view of the Policy Exchange?
Listen, that report.
Well, you used to give lectures at the Policy Exchange.
I've spoken at lots of different places. I've spoken at lots of different places, Nick, as have you. Listen, that report is it's thinly veiled politics. It's forwarded by Chris Philch, had a Home Secretary. It's arguing that the Mayor of London should lose his powers over the police. I leave politics to politicians. On phone theft. On phone theft, it's down this year. It's going down further. There was an article in the Times about 6 or 12 months ago about how similar rates of phone theft in some other big European cities. There's an international market in this. We arrested a gang a couple of months ago, you may have reported it, who were exporting 40,000 stolen phones a year to Hong Kong.
Yes.
We've got some other similar operations about to come to fruition. So we're breaking the organised crime business that's behind this, and as well as tackling the kids on the bikes and...
Commissioner, if we're not the European capital, which city is?
So I can't remember the cities in the article.
You're telling me there are worse cities in Europe?
If you look at per capita, there are cities with comparable rates of theft.
Europe?
Because this is a global market.
Sure.
We've been putting pressure on the phone companies. We need Google and Apple, who run Android and the iOS operating system, to make it that your stolen phone can't be repurposed and sold again. That's what gives it value.
Presumably you lobby on that.
We have been lobbying on that.
And what response do you get from those providers?
Not good enough yet, frankly. Because if you and I are both old enough to remember when car radios were being stolen out of cars.
I must have lost half a dozen.
Exactly. Yeah. And then cars, the sector redesigned cars, they got smart, and now you can't... We said to one of our kids, are you worried about your car radio being stolen out of your car? They'd look at you like you're a buffoon, wouldn't they?
They would.
But sort of...
Well, they do anyway.
I have the same experience. But the sort of... it should be possible to turn a stolen phone into a brick. You as the owner, if your phone's been stolen... say it's an Apple phone or an Android phone, log on to the operating system,
and just
record it as stolen, and then it becomes a brick and it's never repurposable.
Why won't they help you and other forces?
I don't know. I don't know. So we keep pressing them on that. Okay. We're having conversations with them, but they haven't moved quickly enough.
All right, let's get to the calls. That's what it's about. Sophie's in Mill Hill. Sophie, you're through to the Commissioner. Go ahead. Good morning.
Hi, Nick. Hi, Commissioner. Thank you for taking my call. So from my own personal experience as a Jewish person living in London, and for many other Jews in my community, there is huge concern that officers at recent protests in London have been left to make highly discretionary decisions about whether to intervene or arrest, rather than adhering to a consistent standard of enforcing the law when it is clearly broken. So my question to you, Commissioner, is, do you believe that it is ever acceptable for the police to apply the law differently to different communities?
Commissioner.
We should apply the law consistently to all communities, and we do that.
Are you happy that's been the case ever since those demonstrations began after the horrific events of October the 7th?
I'm not going to claim that in hundreds and hundreds of demonstrations we've got everything perfect every time, but on a broad average, yes, everything has been consistent. I think that the way that the heat of protest has grown over recent years is extraordinary. It goes back to anti-vax protests, and then we get Black Lives Matter. We've had all those environmental protests trying to close down London. Now we've had pro-Palestine, pro-Israel, and counter-protests. We've got these British nationalist protests. There's one at the weekend, and they're driving polarisation and anger. We use the law to the full effect.
Have you got enough laws? Do you have enough powers?
So I think it's good that the Home Secretary's asked Lord Ken MacDonald to do a root and branch review of public order and hate crime legislation around these issues, because I do think some of these laws were written in the 1980s for a wholly different purpose, and we're applying them to full effect today. I'm sure, I imagine the caller will be concerned about some of the phrases that have been chanted at some of these protests. Every single one of those, we've put advice requests to the Crown Prosecution Service on a regular basis.
What is the situation if someone chants from the river to the sea, which you will be aware a lot of people see, not just as anti-Semitic but threatening and harassment? Is an officer instructed to make an arrest or have a word? What does he or she do?
No, they're not, because we've repeatedly gone to CPS, say, can we prosecute in this circumstance? Can we prosecute in that circumstance? And almost without exception, the answer is no. So,
what's the threshold they have to cross?
So it would need to be so some of the sort of hate crime legislation around sort of being sort of threatening or abusive, and sort of with racist or religious hatred overtones. It doesn't get there, and because what lawyers and people will say is, whilst to some people it means obliteration of Israel and Jews, to other people it has different meanings to that. So that ambiguity means that you can't convict beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily the view I would like it to be, but that's what the law is. Those are the laws at the moment, and we have to work within that.
Well, that's a structure. You haven't got a choice.
I haven't got a choice. So Parliament decides on the law, and so it's really frustrating to be using law that is so old. And Parliament has created laws that are actually quite vague and difficult, which makes it hard for officers.
Do you think people should be prosecuted for saying slogans such as "from the river to the sea"? You must have a view, Commissioner.
I think the fact that we have phrases being used on a sort of anti-Palestine protest, anti-Israel protest, on British nationalist protests, people are choosing phrases to go close to the legal line that are offensive and upsetting to other communities. And I see that polarisation, that driving polarisation in London. I've lived in London for over 25 years. I see myself as a Londoner now. I wouldn't live anywhere else. I find that's really upsetting to see that, and sort of.
So there should be laws in place.
And I think that the law isn't helping us with the current situation. I hope Lord Ken MacDonald can find a thoughtful way through this for the Home Secretary.
All right, Sophie, thank you for your call. Naji is in Hendon. Naji, you're on the radio. Good morning.
Morning, Nick. Good morning, Sir Mark.
Morning, Naji.
So, Mark, my question is this. If you were presiding over the policing of a football match involving Maccabi Tel Aviv in London, and your force decided to ban all away fans, how would you react if it were revealed your evidence has not only been severely called into question by the very police you sourced it from, but also used an entirely fictitious account from the local Jewish community and used AI to get intelligence from a football match that never happened?
This is, of course, the game between Aston Villa and Maccabi Tel Aviv, with West Midlands Police now in the frame for the use of AI.
I must declare a bizarre interest as an Aston Villa fan.
Yes.
Now, I'm not going to. I haven't read into the details. I don't know all the facts behind it. I'm not going to comment on the precise issues that happened in West Midlands. I think the Chief Constable's given evidence on that, and that's for.
He's been recalled as well. He's coming back, yeah.
And that's for him to talk about. What I would say is, though, from my perspective, the only reason that I would expect the Metropolitan Police to ask football authorities to ban away fans in any circumstance is purely if those away fans are so violent and difficult that it presents a sort of an unmanageable policing problem. That has to be the key issue. We must not allow any other factors sort of
So if Maccabi Tel Aviv was pulled to play West Ham or Tottenham, you could see circumstances by which you would tell the fans they can't come to the game?
Well, I'm not talking about... So it depends. It depends on any game. It could be a derby match, could be anything. If you had information that says so many of those fans are so violent that their behaviour is not policeable, that's a perfectly reasonable thing to say to the authorities. We think this is dangerous. It's a very high bar. It mustn't be influenced by community pressure and other factors like that. But
that's giving in to them, isn't it? That's allowing violent fans effectively to stop decent fans coming to watch a football match.
So, but if a club has a reputation that their travelling fans are so violent, that has to be planned against. But I think that one of the public concerns has been on issues like this, does community pressure affect it? And the point I'm making, community pressure must never affect that. It must be an analytical judgment. Are these fans so dangerous that they can't safely be policed?
Assistant Chief Constable in the West Midlands, Mike O'Hara, has used AI and has apologised for misleading people, and particularly Jewish people up there. Has AI ever been used by the Met in circumstances such as this?
We're sort of experimenting with the use of AI, but you've clearly got to be very, very careful because it's...
what do those experiments mean? In what way are you experimenting?
Well, so for example, our facial recognition technology is a sort of AI, but we've gone to the National Physical Laboratory. We've had it tested to make sure it's accurate, to make sure it's fair. The world is using more and more technology. I'm sure your studio is using it.
Absolutely.
So we've got to use the best of technology, particularly as an organisation that's getting smaller. The thing is, we've got to be thoughtful and clever about it so we don't misuse it and use it clumsily. And so I can understand why he's apologised.
All right, Naji, thank you. On the subject of facial recognition, Commissioner, Lee in Brentwood is scheduled as the next caller anyway. Lee, you're through to Sir Mark. Go ahead. Good morning.
Good morning, gents. So, with the recent announcement of the stepping up of the use of AI for facial recognition, it seems obvious it's going to be linked to the also announced digital ID cards. How can we be sure and trust that the police and the bodies behind working around with the police are going to delete not just the images but also the data, the location data, etc., of people that are not on your watch list, and therefore, you've assured us it's going to be instantly deleted. How can we trust that?
Well, that's what we're doing, and we've said that very publicly. We get regularly inspected.
Well, you might say it, but I think my listener wants a sort of rather more definitive source of proof as how we can be so relaxed.
We get regularly inspected, and sort of in all sorts of ways. We have duties in terms of data, and we report any breaches to the Data Protection Commissioner. So this is really important that we use these technologies carefully, which is what's behind your question. So that's why I say we have it independently tested that the technology works. We're very careful. The images that we put into our system, we're only looking for wanted offenders and people on court orders like registered sex offenders. In the last year, it led to the arrest of 1,000 people for very serious offences, people wanted for rape, people wanted for serious violence. It's helped us catch lots of registered sex offenders breaching their conditions, including one whom was walking a 6-year-old girl to a school, having recently befriended her mother, which is just horrific. I think we intercepted something there that was a relationship building that would have ended up in a really, really ghastly place. Liam, I'd point out to you that
it's Lee, not Lee.
Sorry, I misheard. Sorry, apologies.
That's my job. Don't worry.
When you walk down the street and you walk past council CCTV or you walk past shop CCTV, they keep that video for 28 days. If you walk past one of our facial recognition cameras, if you're not wanted, it's deleted within a millisecond. So we're really careful. We don't want anyone's personal data unnecessarily. And we're going to stick to those very, very high standards because we recognise this will raise concern.
Okay.
The other point I'd make, 85% of Londoners support the use of this.
How do you know that?
And we've done survey work on it that's shown that, and that's I think
independent survey,
not
as the Met.
No, I'm going out and asked a few mates. No, we've done it professionally.
Right, okay. And it's used as regards illegal e-bikes. It says, is that right? Facial recognition. It
can capture anybody in any circumstance. So someone on a bike going past them, it will capture their face. So we need to use the technology to keep match fit with criminality, and this is one example of that.
All right, let's go to some of the questions. Sorry, Lee, thank you. Let's go to some of the questions that are coming in over the email and the text. Now, this comes from a serving officer who asks me not to give you his or her name, and says the following: I've been told that I will have to leave the police because I'm not willing or able or up for the challenge for retraining. Could you ask the Commissioner to define exactly what he means by this? I think this was the initiative you put out, wasn't it, that you want officers to come to meet the fresh challenges. You said this a couple of months ago, as I recall.
That's such a vague question. I'm not quite sure what issue there.
Wasn't this the so-called voluntary exit scheme? The management policy is widening efforts to purge the force of officers deemed unsuitable for service by launching a payoff scheme. I think that's what he or she is referring to. So, who are not willing or able to change, is what your current officer is. Clearly, she hasn't made whatever the grade is that you set. I mean, what define not willing or able to change?
So if he or she's decided they're not match fit for policing, they should leave, shouldn't they?
But what's match fit mean?
Well, they're asking a question. So what I've said to leaders, we've got some fantastic leaders. The vast majority of our people care deeply and are doing a good job. But the world's getting tougher. We've got to lift what we do for the communities of London. We've had a conversation with leaders about how we put more support around them, how we help them develop their leadership skills more. So this is supportive of the vast majority of our leaders. But some people might decide, actually, that they're not up for the challenges ahead, and that's okay. And
well, the Metropolitan Police Federation says it's a thinly veiled threat, Sir Mark.
So I need to have the best leaders available to support the people of London. We have made a lot of changes in the top levels of leadership in the top 30 police officers in London over the last 3 years, and we've had a serious conversation with the next tiers, the 700 people from Chief Superintendent to Chief Inspector. There's some fantastic people there. We're going to help them develop and be better leaders. We're investing in their training and development. But we're also going to get sharper in assessments to make sure that people understand where they're succeeding and where they can improve.
What about if this officer doesn't know what she's not getting right? How do they find out?
So they will get, well, like any organisation, they'll get their annual review where they get to their performance gets graded. We're also working with independent supplier to help assess people's leadership capability. So they'll get all the support and help they want, but we're simply giving people a dignified route out. If they don't want this challenge, then there's a way they can step aside.
All right, one more before we go back to the calls. 20 after 8, by the way, if you're listening to this show. Rachel in Bexley says, can you ask the Commissioner, I know he can't go into what are called live cases, but will the hideous events that were seen at Charing Cross Police Station in custody suites never be repeated? Can he give that assurance?
So I sort of can go into live cases, actually, in the sense, as much as the vast
better than I. Go ahead.
The vast majority of those people have already left the Met. We've sacked most of them. A couple of them, there's still material to go through.
Are there not charges? Are they not be taken to the courts? I'm sorry. I'm obviously we've got that wrong.
So in most cases, no. So the IOPC are looking at whether any criminal investigations are justified. But in the meantime, that's the Independent Office of Police Complaints. But we've worked closely with them. We've worked faster with them, both of us, than we've ever done before. And we got fast-track misconduct hearings against most of the officers, and I think something like 7 of the 10 have already gone. I may be slightly wrong in the numbers.
So, how did you feel when you saw that videotape?
So it's a ghastly. The content is ghastly, isn't it? You've got people with sort of awful racist views. Yep. I've been really clear about bearing down on standards. We've shared is the wrong word. We've forced out the organisation 1,500 people in 3 years. That's more than triple the rate. A lot of that is because good colleagues have reported it. We're still working on that, so we'll find some ghastly individuals. That's how we haven't finished that purge. But most of this stands on all the good men and women of the Met. And you've come across a lot of the Met. They really care, and they're reporting their colleagues. They want to challenge this because they want their integrity not to be undermined by morons like the people who saw in that programme.
When do you see the process ending? When will all the rotten apples be out of the barrel?
I don't think you can ever have a perfect organisation of 45,000 people, but we can get it down to an absolute minimum, and we're a long way towards that, but there's more work to do.
Let's get to more calls. Chris is in Richmond. Chris, you're through to the Commissioner. Morning, Chris.
Good morning, Nick. Good morning, Sir Mark.
Morning, Chris.
I've been American here, living in London for 16 years, and just curious to think if you believe Donald Trump was right to criticise London Mayor Sadiq Khan.
Yes, he said that he was a nasty person. He also talked about the crime that engulfs London. Commissioner.
I'll leave the political sparring to the politicians. In terms of some of the comments that come from America about London, they're complete nonsense. if you look at the sort of, for example, if you look at...
Let me just remind my listeners, sorry to talk over you. So look at the crime you have in London. This is Donald Trump speaking. My mother loved London. She loved that city. Today you have people being stabbed in the ass or worse. Your mayor is a disaster. He's a nasty person. Let's not play the man. But President goes on, he's letting crime go. You have areas in London and in Paris where police don't even want to go anywhere near those areas. Commissioner.
So there's no-go areas. That's completely false.
Is that fake news?
I think how anybody in America can suggest the UK is violent is completely ridiculous. I think the murder rate, the homicide rate in London is lower than every single US state. It's lower than all their big cities. I think the murder rate in New York, last time I looked, is about 3 or 4 times higher than it is in London, sort of per capita. Whilst I make this point, the homicide rate in London is lower than it is in Toronto. It's lower than Paris. It's lower than Brussels. It's lower than Berlin. This is a safe city. I'm not going to pretend it's perfect. It's a safe city. Injury violence in London is lower than the other cities in the UK, and I think this trend of trying to rubbish London, some of which is driven by politics, we need to we who are proud Londoners need to fight back about it, because there's lots to be proud of about London. Clearly, there are some crime issues that we're tackling, and it's not perfect, but I'm proud of the progress we're making at reducing crime.
What do you make about the personal insults hurled at the mayor by the President of the United States?
I leave political sparring to politicians.
OK, but he's wrong here. President Trump is totally wrong.
But I'm not going to talk about him personally, but
the picture.
The picture that's been portrayed sometimes about London internationally is not accurate.
And coming back to that policy exchange report, there was the suggestion that Sadiq Khan should be stripped of responsibility for overseeing the Met. However, they say a slump in public confidence down to 45%. I have to ask you to react to both those elements.
So that's a report with a forward written by the Shadow Home Secretary, Conservative Chris Philp.
Does that mean it's wrong, Commissioner?
I'm not going to get into the middle of political sparring.
I'm asking you to the polling that they did. Fewer than half of people and think the Met's doing a good job. You're the boss. That's not great for the men and women brave enough to do the job, is it?
I can't speak for the quality of their polling. 54% of Londoners say, based on our surveying, independent survey again, 54% of Londoners say that the Metropolitan Police is getting better. Right. Only 18% say the opposite. The vast majority of people are saying the Met is getting better. We are bringing crime down. We're making Londoners safer. Your team were out in Shoreditch where we're doing this amazing operations to keep people safe at Christmas.
Yep. Thank you for that.
On the Big Friday shopping day a couple of weeks ago, the footfall in London was nearly 3 times as much in the previous 3 years. The policing operations we ran meant that crime was down 14%. London is a safe place to come. It's getting safer every day. My officers are working extraordinarily hard, and we as proud Londoners should kick back against the nonsense on social media trying to run it down.
Let's get Chris. Thank you for your call. Bob is in Beverley in East Yorkshire. Bob, your question. Morning.
Yeah, morning both. I understand the Home Secretary may be looking at reducing the number of police services forces down to 12. Do you think this may lead to a further knocking of community policing at the local level?
I don't know that is exactly the Home Secretary's view, but I have said publicly previously, I think it's time for policing to be redesigned for now, because we're working on a model that was designed in a 1962 Royal Commission.
That's right. We went from, unbelievably, 117 forces down to 43.
Exactly.
So does 43 need to become 12?
43 needs better. It needs to reduce. So the thing behind your question, Bob, which I completely agree with, local community policing is absolutely critical. That is the foundation of what everybody needs and everybody wants, and that's what I hear when I'm out in London.
So would you be supportive of this, Commissioner?
In today's world, there are lots more complex threats and issues that we're dealing with, and all of those, because we've got too many police forces, too many headquarters, too many specialist units, too many national bodies, too many league forces, all of that together sucks resources away from the local. If we organise policing better with fewer forces, we can have more resources locally in your community.
Is 12 the optimum number?
I don't know what the optimum number is.
What would happen to the Met? Would it grow?
The Met's the biggest force and will probably still be the biggest force. So it's
well, no, but would it grow? Would it take a bit of Kent, a bit of Essex?
I doubt that. I doubt that. But that's not on the table today. The key point is we need policing to be organised as it best can be to serve local communities, and if we sort out the expensive mess of spaghetti of 43 force headquarters, 9 regional collaborations, West Midlands leading on ballistics intelligence, West Yorkshire leading on helicopters, the Met leading on certain things, all of that complexity costs a load of money, sucks resources away from policing your community, Bob. So that's why we need to make change so that you get a better local service.
Last couple of minutes together, I need to put you an LBC investigation, which I think you've been made aware of, a former Metropolitan Police officer accused of being involved in a London paedophile ring or grooming gang. There were 2 complaints made against a custody sergeant back in 2012. This was elevated or escalated to detective chief inspector level. I understand you've been made aware of this. Did you know about this at the time, this case?
I know hundreds of cases. I don't know if I knew about it at the time, but that case was investigated there, and what we're doing now is we're, as part of our reviews of all the grooming cases, we're sort of reviewing that case. Were there any missed opportunities? Is there anything that was flawed in the investigation, or was it done completely properly?
But you were Assistant Commissioner of Specialist Crime at this time, weren't you?
I was, yeah.
So did you know about the case?
We have hundreds of thousands of cases. I literally can't remember.
But if you knew about it, why wasn't it investigated? Why was he allowed to retire, the officer involved allowed to retire prior to an investigation if you knew about the case?
I don't know the answer to that question.
How are we going to get to the answer to that question?
So I've got teams reviewing it. So that has been recently surfaced.
Yes, by LBC.
We've got teams reviewing whether the investigation was done properly. Clearly, you've got one account. You've got one account, Nicky.
But if you're AC Specialist Crime Commissioner, you're AC Specialist Crime. Allegations are made about an officer, a senior officer, being involved in a grooming gang. Don't you drop everything and investigate it instantly?
So those things are normally dealt with our professional standards. My point is, that was probably dealt with professionally at the time, but we're going to double-check that. I've got officers pouring through it to double-check, was it dealt with professionally at the time?
You have no recollection of the case?
I have no recollection of the case.
OK, one last question on the phones, one last question by email. Frederick in Brixton, is the Commissioner able to give us an update on the Wimbledon car crash? It's more than 2 years and still no report. This is the incident, I think, at the preparatory school in Wimbledon. You may recall, about 2.5 years ago, where 2 girls lost their lives. What's the latest on that, Commissioner?
I think, as our public lines have said, we had the initial investigation reviewed. There's been some further investigative steps, and that work is ongoing. And we're keeping the families updated. I'm not going to say anything more online now.
2.5 years. What's the delay there?
I'm not going to get into the detail of that because I don't want to say anything beyond what families have already been told, and the conversations we're having with CPS and looking at the potential for any prosecutions.
OK, so will it be resolved soon? Can you at least tell me that?
I would expect to be resolved soon, yes.
Within 6 months? By the 3rd anniversary?
I would expect it to be resolved soon.
By the third anniversary?
I'm not going to make up a date now, Nick.
Final question. Unfortunately, the call has gone, but I'll ask it anyway. 8:30 is the time. Metropolitan police officers have been told they must be real if they are Freemasons under new rules. Why?
If you look back at history, there have been multiple public reports raise questions about Freemasons having disproportionate influence in the police. In about 2019 or 2020, the Daniel Morgan inquiry report recommended it should become declarable within the Met. The leadership team at the time decided not to do that.
This was the case involving, of course, the murder down in Sydenham back in 1987, as I recall.
So that was reviewed by Nuala Alone, former sort of ombudsman in Northern Ireland Policing, and she felt that it should become declarable. That the leadership team at the time decided not to do that. Earlier this year, we did an intelligence review on whether we thought there were grounds to do that based on the integrity work we're doing in the Metropolitan Police, and a combination of the historic factors, including that recommendation, and the intelligence picture we can see in London today. We consulted over the summer. It's noteworthy that 2/3 of our officers think it ought to be declarable, which goes to the level of concern that any society which has a hierarchy, a degree of secrecy, and an expectation of sort of loyalty to each other, there's a concern, I think, widespread that may lead to not acting without fear or favour. I'm sure that that many Masons do great charity work and it's not a threat, but we need to do everything possible to protect the integrity of the organisation.
You're uncomfortable about Masons serving under you?
I'm not uncomfortable about Masons serving. I'm uncomfortable about the degree of secrecy. If we bring sunlight to it, then that avoids any conflicts of interest for individuals, doesn't it, by people having to declare it.
The Masons are saying it's, quote, unlawful, disproportionate, unfair and discriminatory.
They can say that. I disagree. There's been if you look back in history, you'll see so many reports questioning Freemasonry in the police. We have a hard recommendation made like 5 years ago by Nuala Alone in relation to a very sensitive inquiry from history. We've looked at the intelligence picture we have today, and the combination of factors, I'm satisfied this is absolutely necessary. And the fact the majority of the good men and women in the Met are very clear this ought to be declarable, that they think undermines their trust in the organisation, that's important. There are many, many women officers in the organisation particularly who are massively relieved at this decision because they feel they are disadvantaged by sadly, a boys' club.
Have you ever been invited to become a Freemason?
No.
You have no interest in it?
I've got no interest in it whatsoever.
OK. Finally, as I say farewell, it might be worth you saying a word, because many of us will have some kind of Christmas celebrations, but the men and women serving under you won't, because they will be out there 24 hours, 7 days a week, every single day, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve and everything else. A word to the officers that serve under you, Sir Mark.
I hope they know this, that they're fantastic men and women. They go out day in and day out. They do extraordinary things. When I do commendation ceremonies and long service medals, and I had a ceremony this week, people who've served for at least 40 years in the Metropolitan Police as police officers and police staff, one guy who's done over 50 years. These people care immensely, and this is not just a job, it's a vocation. They stretch themselves, they stress themselves, their families and their friends see the products of that sometimes. Sometimes they get injured. They work antisocial hours. They really care about London. They're out there making a difference day in and day out, giving their best for you. So please give a thought for those officers as you're having your Christmas tipple.
Happy Christmas to you and all your colleagues.
Happy Christmas, Nick. Thank you.
Sir Mark, thanks for appearing on LBC. 8:34, time for headlines.
Sir Mark Rowley's told Nick that some of Donald Trump's claims about safety in London are nonsense. The head of the Met Police has denied there are no-go areas and says it's ridiculous for anyone in the US to suggest that Britain is violent. There are concerns hospital admissions for flu could triple by the peak of the pressures on the NHS in England. The Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, will be taking your calls with Nick later in the programme. Figures show the British economy contracted for the second month running in October. Analysts had been expecting a slight rebound, but official figures show GDP fell by 0.1% instead.